All right. And yeah, good afternoon. Until further notice, Civic Center Revitalization Committee meetings will be conducted pursuant to the provisions of California Government Code Section 54953E, added by Assembly Bill 361, which allows the city to use teleconferencing and to provide the public an opportunity to address the committee via a call-in option or an internet-based service option during a proclaimed state of emergency. During the state of emergency related to the COVID-19 pandemic and in the interest of public health and safety, the committee members will be participating in the committee meeting via a virtual teleconference platform. Additionally, the committee is providing a virtual participation option for members of the public. I will go over the specifics of how to join the webinar and will give details on how the public can offer their public testimony. Today's committee meeting will be held virtually using the Zoom webinar platform. Members of the public can join the meeting by computer, tablet, or smartphone by accessing the link which is listed on the meeting notice and agenda on the committee webpage. To join the Zoom webinar by telephone, please dial 1-669-254-5252. When prompted, input webinar ID 161-340-8303. This information is also available on the agenda. When the chair introduces the item you would like to comment on, you will raise your hand by either tapping the raise your hand button on your computer, tablet, or smartphone, or by pressing *9 on your phone. You will be taken in the order in which you raise your hand. You may only speak once on a particular item. When I indicate it is your turn to speak, I will call you by your name as it appears on the Zoom webinar attendee list, or I will read out the last 4 digits of your phone number. If you have called into the meeting, that is how you will know it is your turn to speak. If you have joined the webinar by computer, tablet, or smartphone, you will receive a pop-up notice to select to unmute your device. If you have called into the meeting by cell phone or landline, press *6 on your phone to unmute yourself. I will review these instructions briefly again when the public comment period on an item is open. Please wait until the item you wish to speak to has been called before raising your hand to speak. If you raise your hand during a non-comment period, your hand will be lowered. When you are announced as the next speaker, please unmute yourself and offer your comments. Also, please mute the volume on your TV or computer before you begin to speak. Jamie, you're muted.
Jamie, you're muted.
Thank you. You'd think we'd learn by now. I'll call the Civic Center Revitalization Committee of meeting January 9th to order. I'll now call the roll. Please unmute yourself and say present. Lori Black.
Present.
Bridget Brashear. Betsy Brennan.
Present.
Mark Cafferty. Julie Coker. Julie Corrales. Steve Cushman. Colleen Fitzsimons.
Present.
Denise Garcia. Martha Gilmer. Alan Ginn. Joel Hermosillo. Donna Jones.
Here.
Jennifer Luce. Jack McGrory. Mark Nelson. Bill Ponder. Stephen Russell. Dr. Ricky Shabazz.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark.
Present.
Okay. You snuck in there on me. Bill
I was
Ponder.
watching the council.
Present.
Stephen Russell. Dr. Ricky Shabazz. Tony Young. And Mike Zuchet.
Present.
All right, so we don't have a quorum, and I don't think we'll have a quorum even with, who all is at council still, Betsy?
Joel Hermosillo, Steve Cushman, Jennifer Luce, Martha Gilmer.
Okay,
I think we get to quorum with 11 or 12. So I think
with
that
12. So that's 12 once they all come up. Well, I'll just move to my chair's report. I talked with this group already, just kind of what's going on today. And I apologize, I know there's some confusion. The city council meeting was originally, we thought it was tomorrow. There was just some miscommunication on when that was. I know there was also some confusion on us and what was happening at city council. I know there were some folks who thought there was a final presentation by us to the city council tomorrow. That was never the case. It was always just an update. Jay was just providing an update on where we're at. There will be more bites at the Appalachia City Council. And we also needed to kind of finalize our conversation from last time. We have a couple of reports that I believe were finished, which is the Economic Development Committee and the Tourism Committee or subgroup. Sorry if I'm saying them wrong. But I think Betsy had a tweak on hers, and Jennifer Luce was just finalizing all of the work that, you know, all of you did in that subgroup. So I do know Jay is working on a draft report for all of our consideration on the 23rd, and he's made a lot of progress on it, but he needs our kind of final blessing on these subcommittee reports so that he can finish that. And I know it's his intent to get that out to us in advance, so we're not, so we're well prepared. And we'll certainly do our best. And Chris, maybe you and I can talk about the best way of getting everyone here. Maybe we just put an appointment on their calendars so it's just on there. That might help. So that is all I have. Thank you again for all of you who are here today. And let's see. Do we have any staff report or comment?
Yeah, if I could, I just wanted to quickly share my screen and walk you all through some updates on the Civic Center committee website, so we can get a little more familiar with it. Can you all see the website now?
Yes.
Yes.
So this is the Civic Center Revitalization Committee website, in case any of you have not yet visited. You can share that with the public. It's easy to sign up for email updates, and there's several of PDFs, including the mayor's appointments, the city council priorities, public comments that are submitted here are included in these links. So recently we had the American Institute of Architects with a letter of support. You can see that here. And then for today's meeting, we'll be looking at the reports. So we have included all the reports and attachments or appendices from each of the roundtables and working groups. We'll be reviewing each of these later today once we meet a quorum. I am seeing that City Council's information item is concluded, so everyone's heading downstairs now. The Zoom link remains the same, and if you download again the weekly, it'll automatically update your calendar to include this meeting and the one for the 23rd. So that's important for each of the members listening now to please click on the weekly link and download for the next meeting as well. Yeah, so I'll leave it at that. And I think that everybody else will be joining shortly downstairs.
And can we go to non-agenda public comment?
Yes, let's go ahead and do that.
Sorry, I'm moving you around, Chris.
Yeah, it's all good. We're improvising here. Okay. So moving on to non-agenda public comment. Non-agenda public comment is an opportunity for members of the public to comment on items that are not on the agenda, but within the subject matter jurisdiction of the committee. Each speaker will have 2 minutes. The public comment period for non-agenda public comment is now open.
We're on when you guys.
Please raise your hand if you wish to speak. To raise your hand to speak, select the raise your hand button or press *9. Members of the public who wish to provide virtual testimony must enter the virtual queue by raising their hand before the queue closes. The queue will close when the last virtual speaker finishes speaking or 5 minutes after the queue has opened, whichever happens first. When I let you know it is your turn to speak, unmute yourself by either selecting the unmute prompt that will appear on your device or by pressing *9 on your cell phone or landline.
And do we have any speakers in the queue?
Yes, we have 2 speakers. First off is last digit 7968. Go ahead. Seven nine six eight.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I appreciate that. Joy Sunyata, District 3. I have lived downtown for 16 years. So and as a senior citizen retired, I really had a chance to engage with, and I've been a very, very active person at Center City Development Corporation and through the years. So I have a good big picture of downtown. So I'm really following this wonderful project very closely. And so I'm sorry that a couple of things, I'm going to mix everything together, but that's kind of the way it's all going for you. I really loved the presentation today and all of the feedback that happened at the city council meeting. I watched it all the way up to phoning into you at 3:30. So I really highly recommend that you watch the replay tonight if it happens on City 24, City TV 24. They usually do the replay in the evening starting at 6, I believe. So because you don't want to miss it. It's really a great, the whole agenda item is great. So couple of things. Loved going into finding your agenda. It was easy. All the instructions were there. So thank you as a public person. Great job on that. Sorry about the confusion. I wouldn't schedule your meeting during any city council meeting, but that's just my suggestion, and I certainly look forward to the 23rd. But at the same time, I like to participate in the city council meeting, so there's some conflict there for me. So I think that kind of covers everything. I have a lot more to say. I may speak at city council today also on non-agenda public comment, but thank you. A great job. You're very important. And I always finish my comments with love to all.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sunyata. Chuck Kaminsky.
So am I unmuted now? You can hear me. Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you. Unfortunately, I didn't see the city council presentation, but I'm going to focus on two aspects. One is I hope that as the report is generated, that the introduction be really expressive of the big, bold vision that should be intended for these 6 blocks, that it really represents San Diego and its potential for the next 50 years or so, because that's pretty much what will happen. And that the values that each of the roundtables may have expressed, without getting into the weeds or the nitty gritty, but reinforcing the vision, should follow through. And then the reports can be almost addendums that that support the introduction of the whole idea of what this committee has been working on. That's one point. The second is, I know that there's been an intent to say that the primary focus should be the replacement of the cab building, but I believe that there are 4 foci. It should be the Civic, the new City Hall, the Civic Plaza that supports the City Hall, the government offices that support the government that the people rely on, housing definitely, and cultural amenities. If you can capture the civic, the housing, and the culture as the prime thrust of the vision, I think that would be an excellent way to present the report. Transportation hub, I think, is secondary or tertiary. It seems out of place in that particular area. It would seem to be more focused at the Santa Fe Depot, where you have the Amtrak, the coaster, and the trolley, and the cruise ship terminal, or actually closer where Sandag originally was hoping, in the Old Town area, nearest to the airport, the trolley, the coaster, etc. So those are my comments today, and I look forward to seeing the draft report, particularly what would be called, I guess, an executive summary. So thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chuck. And that concludes public comment.
Thanks, Chris. I'm going to just call the roll for those who just joined us. Jennifer Luce, if you guys can unmute and say present, thanks.
Here.
Martha Gilmer.
Here.
Joel Hermosillo.
Here.
Steve Cushman.
Present.
And who am I missing? Do I have everyone? Okay, everyone else has stepped. Okay, Thank you. And now that does give us a quorum, correct, Chris?
I'm checking right now. 1, 2, 3.
I think by my count, we have.
Yes. We have a quorum.
Great, thank you. So we are going to item 1, the recap of City Council informational update on Civic Center Revitalization Project. And I'll turn it to Chris and then Jay.
We can go straight ahead to Jay.
Okay, let's go.
Thank you. I assume you can hear me. I thought it went well. Made an overall presentation, covered some of the key elements of the various working groups' recommendations. Again, this was an information only item. And then I laid out some timetables, both for when we can have the NOA hit the street, as well as once the NOA hits the street, when we think we'll conclude negotiations with whomever we select. And that looks like, maybe conservatively, but maybe 2026 when a shovel could maybe hit a ground. Then I also presented an alternative timetable or a specific timetable as it relates to constructing a city hall as a standalone project and not part of the NOA. And have people start moving in, again, conservatively thinking in first or second quarter of 2029. But I think we can move that up and at least get some of these current city council members into the new building. There was a couple of public comments, mostly supportive of the idea, obviously pushing housing. There was one person who came up and spoke for 30 seconds, if that long, just saying, don't do it. A lot of interesting council comments. I don't think there was anything new that we heard from the council other than I think the one issue has to do with the timing of issuing the NOA compared to the timing of the JLL analysis being done. They understand that there seemed to be support generally for doing a standalone city hall project, but the concern that was expressed was possibly if you're doing a standalone city hall project and then you learn later that you don't have enough space because you don't have the JLL information and you've already released the NOA and you might need some of that space, how do you dovetail with that developer or development team along with the new city hall? I'm not as concerned, but it was pointed out that while JLL is probably working as expeditiously as possible, and I think we're going to have some good information by this summer from them, there's nothing magical about issuing the NOA in the first quarter of 2023. I think that's been more driven by the city council's desire to keep things moving along and the mayor's desire to keep things moving along. It was a big issue that was raised when we settled the 101 Ash litigation and acquired the building. We got a vacant building sitting there. Let's show some progress, but maybe having these kind of discussions is adequate enough. So that's one area. Obviously, homelessness shelters, dealing with that issue is critical, as well as affordable housing and workforce housing. And can we go beyond just the minimum number of 25%? Can we push higher? And of course, the answer is absolutely yes. 25% is the minimum. And then of course, the mix of affordable housing, not all at 80% AMI, maybe some's at 40%, 50% of AMI and so forth. Then they were also concerned that they talked about the navigation center site. I think there's general support for not doing a super NOA, but on the other hand, they don't want us then to just sit on our hands as it relates to other properties. And so a question came up about staffing needs. And if we need more staff to move things along, they're wide open to that. And I think finally, and then other people who are here can add other comments. Should we try to seek city employee input into this process? And I didn't have an opportunity to necessarily respond. That obviously Mike is on the citizens committee, but it doesn't mean that we don't reach out and maybe try to do some survey from the employees. But we're sort of doing that with the JLL analysis as it is in terms of wanting to telework or not telework, willingness to share office space or not share, and so forth. So, indirectly, I think we are getting some of the information, but maybe that's something else we consider.
Oh, go ahead. Is that Christina?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Christina Fiddler. I just took a couple of notes relative to enhance maybe what Jay had indicated. There's one council member that clearly wants us to do the entire project ourselves and give that real consideration. So taking those notes, that will take some probably education about the capabilities and technical staff and expertise that a city employee has and what is needed in order to accomplish this large project. I also took a couple of notes that we want to maybe educate council members on the varying financing opportunities. And so maybe that's our next, step is there were several questions about financing and what could we do? Maybe it's not hard numbers, but maybe the structures. These are the things that will be potentially presented within packages to help kind of further along the education. I think the other thing is whether or not Dream, you're gonna have a conversation with JLL. That will determine, we can't expedite their workload necessarily, but at the same point, if they could get us some deal points ahead of time that we could use, that would help inform it and keep us on track. So I think those are the only other things I added. And then I have a couple of things to get back to about what are the parameters we can work within on the Housing Navigation Center and hopefully separate the conversation from the redevelopment of Civic Center versus what we can do on other city-owned sites, specifically those that may be positioned differently.
And I would add, because it triggered a couple of things. Number one, on the navigation site, there was a request, can we go back to HUD and get the conditions waived so we could move forward with that redevelopment faster? I don't know how much time that's going to ultimately save anyways. But that was just at least a question. And then it caught me by surprise a little bit, this suggestion that the city run the entire project, because I don't know how we circumvent the Surplus Land Act by doing that, even if we had the technical capability. And if this becomes just so people are aware, there's a charter section, 90.3, that if this becomes a major public works project, and major means a cost to the general fund of over 10% of the general fund budget. Right now, the general fund budget's $2 billion. And there's private benefit. So if we're building housing, we have to go to the vote of the people. So we didn't talk about that today. I'm sharing that with the committee right now. But those are things, whereas just building a city hall with 100% public use, we don't have to go to the vote of the people. So again, the council doesn't know that. It was good questions. We'll do some follow-up to share with them. But I think overall, there's a lot of enthusiasm to move forward with this project. There's a lot of momentum. People recognize, people being council members, that they may not have the benefit of moving into a new city hall. So it's not as if they're building it for themselves. They're building it for the long term of the community and so forth. So very exciting in that respect.
I have one more observation. One of the council members brought up an issue that I think our group has a little bit of concern about, and we just need to navigate carefully, is this idea that you build the city hall on a block that has street, vehicular streets around it. And then the other 5 blocks are a separate, seemingly separate project. I think we need to be really careful that we develop that site with the notion that it wants to feel like a part of the whole. And it's not a silo, because we don't want our city government to be perceived that way. So I think we have to really make suggestions that automatically dispel any of those concerns.
And I really concur with that, because if we create an island, then we've all failed.
Right.
Because we're talking about a civic core, not talking about a civic block, we're talking about a core.
Right.
And if we lose that design similarity relationship, the other thing I would say, I don't think the council totally understands. Cobb and the JLL report go down a path. The NOA isn't dependent upon JLL. JLL, will let us remember, is talking about employees, and that is COM. And if Jay is correct and we have it by summer, that's probably a year to 18 months where you really need it, because what you have in COM is gonna be 500,000 feet, 600,000 feet. That's what JLL is gonna help you. So I think the council thinks, oh my gosh, you're putting an NOA out before the JLL report, but the JLL report relates to COM. If we go COM as an independent facility, there's no issue. When the sooner it comes out, the better it is from a planning standpoint for COM. But it doesn't stop what Jay and the team are gonna do on the NOA, in my opinion.
And it was interesting that one council member sort of picked up on that, it was Council Member Lee, who said, if you're doing 6 blocks as the NOA, maybe you need to wait for JLL. If you're carving that out as a separate project,
Yeah.
maybe you don't.
Right.
So,
Yeah, it doesn't have anything.
I think one way we could,
Getting maybe into a little bit of deliberation, so
Yeah, if we could move on to public comment.
if we can do public comment and then I'll come back around. And I want to note for the record that Carrie Capich is here on behalf of the Tourism Authority. And I wanted to ask, Jay, could you send your presentation around to the committee as
Yeah.
well? Thanks. And so let's move to public comment and then I'll come back.
The public comment period for this item is now open. Please raise your hand if you wish to speak. To raise your hand to speak, select the raise your hand button or input *9. Ms. Senyata, please go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Thank you. I won't ask you again. Joy Senyata, District 3. Mr. Goldstone, so glad that you decided to stay involved. Really, really appreciate you doing that. We need your work and your input so much. I watched the meeting this morning, Mr. Goldstone, and your presentation and all of that, and it was great. I thought it was just wonderful on so many levels. So I cut off, of course, at 3:30 when I tied in with this meeting, but so I'll watch the replay tonight. But I really think it was so useful. So thank you for that. So a couple of things. I hope I have 2 minutes, please. 2 areas I want to cover quickly. The homeless thing first. We don't want this beautiful, wonderful legacy project to be a not in my backyard project. The mayor and everyone, we're all on the same page. We know that the homeless crisis, the housing it's the #1 crisis over everything else. So how are we going to we don't want a barrier to the general thing of revitalization. The homeless, they live in tents and streets and cars and so forth. So we've got to create a revitalization for their community too. So good luck on that, and I'm with you on that. Working space, we're going to get a hybrid out of this, and the work that's being done to figure it out. It's tough, creative, exciting work. So it's going to be bumpy, but it's going to be hybrid. And so I want you to keep that in mind, that we're coming out of this with a hybrid, and I'm so excited about that. And so we'll figure it out together. So I think I'm running out of time, but I love you listening to me. I love all the work you're doing. This is so, I think I got cut off. Love you all.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ms. Senyata. Chuck Kaminsky.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yes, I appreciate Jennifer Luce's comments about the potential for an isolation of the city hall. So I think if and this is a procedural question, will the committee vote then on creating 2 separate projects as part of their report recommendation? One for the city hall or cob site and one for the other remaining blocks, if that is going to be a vote of the committee. And then if it is, I would suggest that the recommendation for the cob site have clear design connectivity requirements to the other remaining blocks, so that be taken into account if the city hall is on a fast track process. Because I have this concern, as everyone, as a few have spoken about it being isolated. The other point is Ash Street. I know in the past people have said just tear it down, but I believe the best use of reuse and carbon control is to really do a quick evaluation of the building. Is it structurally sound? Can the floor plate be used for a repurposed use rather than just trying to tear it down? Thank you for those comment times.
Thank you, Mr. Kaminsky, and that concludes public comment.
Thank you, Joyce and Chuck. And Chuck, I think to your point on procedure, we have taken votes on those, but on our item 2, I think this is more situated for item 2 when we revisit some of the committee reports. But going back to, let's go to committee comment and committee questions for the city council update. Are there additional? I feel like there was more in the room and I was cutting somebody off.
Yeah, I think I was just gonna follow up a little bit about this island silo notion. I wonder if it's even possible, considering the height limit, to add some other programming in that building that would also connect city government and staff to something cultural.
It would have to go to surplus lands though, wouldn't it, Jay?
Well, I don't know that you have to go through the surplus land as much as you might have to go to the vote of the people. Because we know the City Hall project is going to be considered a major capital project. There's going to be more than 200 million. So to the extent you throw, now if it's a nonprofit organization that you're incorporating, then that would qualify. If it's for profit, even putting a cafeteria in there for the employees would trigger.
Right.
So it's
Thinking
possible,
museum.
but you're also envisioning, at least I do, I'm not as creative from envisioning as many as you are. Right now you got a wall across First Avenue with Golden Hall there. Obviously, I would think that that would be opened up anyways, that somebody would just put a large building there that would then still block City Hall from.
Right.
You would hope. And we can put that in the NOA to dovetail with the design and building of a new City Hall. And then there's nothing to prevent or preclude somebody from at least proposing, it would take city council action, to reopen B Street, reopen Second Avenue. You know, you could do that. Now that takes away some developable space, but it may also add some other value for traffic flow. I mean, so all those are possibilities that would preclude the new City Hall from sort of being felt like an isolated development.
Not to grab all the time, but I also had a thought about putting information into the NOA. I mean, I think we talked about today at City Council that these recommendations from our group aren't necessarily going to become mandates in the NOA.
Right.
But there are really important things that should be requirements, if it's possible.
Well, and I would envision at a minimum as an attachment to the NOA, and we have a meeting tomorrow with HCD. I had hoped we scheduled for Tuesday, thinking we were going to go to City Council on Tuesday, and it wasn't until late last week that we learned no, they scheduled it for Monday. We're trying to find out, can we add some information beyond just the boilerplate language that HCD has prepared?
Right.
And I would envision attaching the committee's report to the NOA, so potential proposers at least read that. And then, as I've mentioned, I think on several occasions, having potential proposers meet with either the full committee if they're willing, or at least people from the committee who are willing to meet with developers to at least provide the input, you know, and expect them to listen to council comments. So maybe tell them to go back to the meeting of September 19th, the meeting of January 9th, so that they have an idea of at least some of the expectations.
But for instance, will there be a requirement to have a theater?
I don't know if there'll be a requirement, because some of that theater, I mean, from what I remember, some of the discussion of this committee is, and from Carol, that philanthropy and maybe $100 million worth of renovation work versus $500 million of building a new theater. And so, you know, how that dovetails, or some other creative approach to a theater, sort of like, let's say, symphony hall, where if somebody feels, hey, if I can build a 40-story building, maybe I could generate enough revenue to also afford to build a theater, a new theater, maybe within a building. And we're going to strongly encourage, no decision been made whether or not it's going to be a mandate that they must either preserve and or supplement.
And ultimately that
Or
would
augment.
need to be blessed by council and HCD, whatever we do require, just like we did with sports for next.
You may or may not want that to be part of the NOA, because then you have to put it out initially for housing. So it may be in best interest to have it complementary. Time will tell on that. But once you determine if in fact there's philanthropy available, then you kind of hold, because then you can tie it together, I would think. But it's $100 million. So if you said you had to do it, it would be $100 million, which is what Carol says the architects say it would cost to refurbish it.
Yeah, I would really want to look at that number. I mean, our renovation is 125 now. And the work that I think needs to be done there, I'm not sure Carol, I wouldn't put all of it on.
So we
That's a low
have,
number.
So I think a lot of this, can I interject for a second? I think a lot of this discussion is really for item 2, if everybody's in agreement.
okay.
I think we moved away from the city council comments.
Excuse us.
We're done.
Are we good with,
Happens when you're in person. I was gonna say, when you're in person, you can get off the rail.
go ahead. I can't hear you very well, so,
No, I think we're saying we're good.
okay. Is anybody on the screen have questions or comments?
Could I just make a quick comment?
Yeah,
I just want to appreciate our speakers. We haven't had a huge quantity of public speakers over the last couple of months, but I feel like we've had really good quality, and just want to appreciate them. Chuck Kaminsky and let's see, Don Wood, a few others, and then of course Joyce Sunyata is always a pleasure to hear from. And Joy, you did not get cut off. We still heard your last use of the word love in your last sentence. And thank you so much for all you do to participate in these things over the years. Thank you.
well said. Thanks, Mike. And this is a discussion item only, so no vote is required. So let's move on to item 2, which is the final Civic Center Revitalization Committee Working Group and Stakeholder Roundtable recommendations. So what I think how we'll proceed here, I think there's only 2 committees that have updates. And I believe it's Betsy and Jennifer. Steve or Carrie, did you have updates to yours from last time?
The only thing we have done, Jamie, in the economic committee is we wordsmithed it a little bit. Other than that, it's exactly what everybody approved.
Okay,
Jamie, we don't have any updates unless there's something more you need us to do, or this group needs us to. That we need us to do any revisions or any additional inputs, just let us know.
okay, so do we want to, Jennifer, do you want to talk about your, it's not really updates, I think you were really finishing your product.
Correct.
Saying that correctly.
So We, as a group, have pulled together our manifesto and then supporting example document, really graphically, and organized it and summarized it so that there are links between precedent projects and the manifesto itself. And we just wanted to really try to make it a very clear document for anyone who hasn't been involved in all these discussions to really absorb and take hold of as their own. And one of the things we have done with the manifesto is invited people to sign the document, which I think does happen in the manifesto process. So at the end of the document, you'll see an opportunity, and Kirsten from my studio can help anyone interested in signing the document to do so. I think there's a website you can go to add your signature. And I think there's a power in that that will speak loudly and clearly. But maybe we could just go to the top of that document, Chris. Super. And we've added a little graphic sexiness to it, let's call it. So we've summarized, we've done some more wordsmithing as you've mentioned, and I think it's coming together as a really tight document. I would love for anyone who's willing to take the time to help us with comments. It's really an opportunity to use strong language and explain, for instance, the difference between taking risks and just having those risks be financial ones versus visionary ones about our urban context. And that was one of the comments today by a city council member. And I think we have to say that risk is really about thinking in a new way, as opposed to just spending money willy-nilly. So we may even want to refine our language even more from this document. But I think we're there. We could just run through it visually. I don't know that. So there's a general statement, which I think we shared. There's a summary of the, I think it's 13 or 15 primary goals. And each of us has refined the language in these.
I didn't think you weren't saying take a financial risk.
No, not at all.
So I think you might want to wordsmith that, because they thought you were talking, somebody thought you were talking, and that isn't at all what you're talking about. You're saying, let's look out and let's have big open spaces and public plaza. You're instead of just building a building straight up and down. That's so somebody didn't understand, or some staff person didn't understand, because that isn't what you were saying at all, in my opinion.
Thank you.
No, I thought you said it well.
So here's the click here if you want to add your name, and hopefully we all will. Goes to change.org. Hopefully even members of the public who have been at these meetings and had wonderful comment would be willing to support the document, and that would mean a lot, I think, to each of the council members reading it. So then we have the next document is a questionnaire that Lori Black put together really as a first step towards understanding how to engage the public in the next process, helping potential developer groups that might come in to really understand our community and what questions is it we should be asking them to gain their support and involvement. And it's a really round one list, but Lori, it's really fantastic. So thank you for all of that hard work. And then finally, our civicness document. What is it that makes Civic happen? I think what we've done here is we've added these icons that really link these projects to our manifesto. So each one of these icons represents one of the manifesto points. And as people run through these example projects, they may not know them, but they can see in the bottom right how they're related to the manifesto. And hopefully it's an educational document for all of us, but particularly for those who are going to come into our city, possibly from the outside, and understand what we appreciate and what we're looking at as being visionary, and how we understand the civic centers of our community, how we can all bring them together in this one place. So we've been synthesizing, summarizing, clarifying. I think we're there, but we'd love your comment.
I think it's educational, informative, and absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you, Jake.
Very well done. And we'll circle back. Betsy, do you want to give us your update? And then we'll go to public comment and then open it up for committee.
Sure. Okay. Hi. Well, thank you so much, Jennifer. It's hard to go after Jennifer because it's a beautiful, well done presentation. I'm going to send Chris the final version of this right after. I have one change that Joel Hermosillo, my colleague, and I are going to make right after this meeting. So, but just to give everyone a little bit of context, we went ahead and gave everyone a little context on the Downtown San Diego Partnership and the Developers Roundtable for people that might not have been part of this effort and kind of what we do, and then everybody that was involved. So just to give a little bit of background. And then we did get a little bit more into the guiding principles. And on the first guiding principle, what I'm going to do is make a little tweak to that so that it's even more clear. But in the first principle, I'm going to make it a little bit more clear that we do obviously want residential use. And the way I wrote it here needs a little bit more wordsmithing, and we'll do that right after here, because I say limit residential use, but I don't mean that. I mean, do all the residential use that is required by HCD and that we want in our core to allow for vibrancy. But I mean, we need things besides residential use. So we do need residential use, but I want to have the complementary uses that we've been talking about, all of us. So that's the arts and culture projects and the commercial and office use. So we'll just change the wording just a bit there. And on the second one, I did respond to some of the questions that we got at council and that we got from our colleagues here at the task force about understanding that it's not going to be all city employees that are housed at this new center, and it'll be a reasonable amount of city employees. And that will allow for transparency and openness in city government, and that will provide excellent customer service to the citizens of San Diego. But we also understand that there's a lot of things that happen in the city of San Diego. It's very complex, and that there'll be city employees throughout the city of San Diego. And the third point, and we just got a little bit more into this point about a robust vision for the public realm to support the other subcommittees and Jennifer's subcommittee and the tourism subcommittee and the economic development subcommittee and the vibrancy of the urban core. And we did, in this point, we did say this would include a civic theater. So that point is in here in our point number 3. How that happens, we are agnostic, but this would include a civic theater, period. Number 4, we do talk about maximizing the connectivity to downtown with the rest of San Diego and providing that connectivity that already exists with the Metropolitan Transit System, the bike system, the major links to the state and interstate system, the major arterials, the airport, the port, the convention center, and the business community, and the residential community. So we do talk about that connectivity. And then our 5th point is to create a site plan diagram for the proposed city blocks to ensure developers meet public interests while identifying connectivity to adjacent properties. And that had to do with what Jennifer's committee was talking about, and I'm looking forward to really delving into your final product even more to understand what that could look like, which what we were just talking about, not maybe walling off First Street and items like that, so that we do have a connected civic core. So we really appreciate the feedback we received from this committee and from the city council and from residents and from businesses as we engaged over the past 25 years, since Lori Black has been talking about this in my position when she held it not that many years ago, actually, Lori, but when Lori was in my position, and we've been having these conversations ever since. So thank you all so much, and I could take any questions that people might have.
Thanks, Betsy.
23 years.
Full
Since
circle.
1999, and I even have the notes that go back to all those meetings. So
And thank you for being a visionary for the PBID also.
Betsy, thank you, Betsy, for your report. Let's proceed with public comment.
The public comment period for this item is now open. Please raise your hand if you wish to speak. Again, to raise your hand, please raise your hand button, please press *9. We have 3 public comment. Ms. Senyata, please go ahead.
Joyce Sonata, did you hear your name called?
Thank you. This is an ongoing situation I have with my phone, I guess. So everybody's trying to be patient with me. I appreciate it. Joyce Senyata, District 3. Thank you, everyone, for the presentations. The working group and the stakeholders roundtable, they're so valuable, and I really like the titles and appreciate all of you who are a part of that. And the reports today were new to me, some of them, so I'll need to do some work, and I'm looking forward to it as far as the manifesto documents, so I'll need to do that, and appreciate that you're wanting public support on that. I don't know who said it, but the words absolutely gorgeous. I second the motion on that. And then Lori Black, I believe, was putting together. I'm sorry, the audio was a little bit staticky on my phone, but it's my flip phone. So anyway, but it sounded really wonderful about engaging the public. So Lori Black, thank you so much. I know you from way back, participating with you in government. So glad you're still on board. And of course, everyone else who has stayed with us through the years and is new and so forth. Love to all of you. And this is exciting. I've been here as downtown for 16 years, and this is the biggest one. So I'm on board and I'm excited about it, and we'll work together and we'll make it happen. So love to all again.
Thank you, Ms. Senyata. Chuck Kaminsky.
Chris, am I unmuted?
Yes, you are.
Oh, thank you. Really briefly, I think as the design roundtable does its further efforts, one thing to consider is the C Street trolley stop, which stops right now in front of the administration building, could form an interesting connection if the city hall is isolated on the Cobb block. So even though that's not in the realm of the revitalization committee, I think there's this public connection that somehow the NOA other blocks may try to or should be advised to have that kind of people-to-people connection, particularly with the trolley stop and how it would engage so that someone can get to the city hall, which is remotely distant. So I don't know where that fits in, but perhaps Jennifer's design roundtable can take a look at it. And as to the cultural site, perhaps there's a placeholder, and whoever is the achieved NOA developer that there is a placeholder site for some cultural entity, whether it's the Civic Theater or not. And I just think the City Hall Council Chamber should be at the street level somewhere. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thomas Tyson. Please go ahead.
Am I unmuted? I keep getting this button that says I'm muted.
Yes, you can go ahead. We can hear you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to say thank you to all the members of the group for your work on this. It is a very good product that you're putting out. There's one part of it that sort of went tweak with me just a little bit. And let me give you a bit of background. I'm former president of the Regional Task Force on the Homeless. And I looked at the language in item 1 from the Downtown San Diego Partnership Report that talked about maximizing revenue and limiting residential use. And Betsy, I admit that I sort of had a negative reaction to that. And I'm going to be very interested in seeing how that is rewritten and worked. Because from my perspective, it should be maximizing residential use, consistent with revenue and value and other uses of the property, okay? That's the clear sense that came from the City Council in their meeting today. As a matter of fact, one member of council actually asked if we could dedicate a whole building to affordable housing, okay? So I think that in order to reflect the sense of the community and the sense of the committee, particularly if we give this to potential participants in the project, we should make sure that it's clear that this is not primarily a revenue generating proposal, but instead primarily a housing proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And that concludes public comment.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, committee comment or questions?
Yeah, I have a comment. I did hear Councilman Whitmer sort of direction to his staff about the homeless people. Is there, how do you think that's going to kind of fold into what's going to happen here once we finish what we're supposed to be doing?
Well, let me take a crack at it. You know, in terms of the shelter and so forth, I think there's general consensus. You know, obviously we, the city, have to do something about a shelter and addressing homelessness. And unless this committee wants to recommend that a shelter be part of a mandate within the NOA, and or want to take a position that a shelter should not be part of a mandate, but however should be located somewhere downtown, i.e. you want to at least acknowledge it, you can take that action. But short of that, if it's not going to be part of the NOA and the development of the 6 blocks, I don't know that you have to specifically address it, other than maybe just acknowledging that homelessness is an issue.
Are there any other questions? Comments? Lori?
Yeah.
I have a quick comment. I don't know if the city council members, and they may know this, but I don't know if the people at large know that the city hall building itself is out of its own compliance. And I you know, every building in downtown is up to speed with all the requirements except that building. And I think it says something to the people that we want to do something for the city workers, that it's not just city council. And I really appreciated Marnie, if you all saw Marnie's comments. And there was the one person who's, you know, they're going to come up and say something to the effect, I was waiting for it and it happened, you know, you're going to build a Taj Mahal for yourself with all the other problems. I think it's going to be important to, and that's where the questions regarding public outreach comes in, is to explain what this property's been over the last almost 60 years and what and could and the processes that we'll go through. I don't know how to do that. I mean, I know how to do it if this was a client, but I want to make sure that the city council members really know if they don't, and their staff. And then when people write to them, they'll be able to say, that it's not up to speed, that there's asbestos, there's all kinds of problems in that building. And if they were working in a building downtown, they wouldn't want it to be this building. And I don't know how to communicate that, but I think it's important for people to understand that the mayor isn't decided, well, I'm just going to willy-nilly and take 6 blocks and make a big iconic building, blah, blah. And, we'll throw some housing and shelters in. That it's a very thoughtful process based on facts. So that's it.
A couple of questions. One, I know that the very first thing that came up when we did the tourism discussions was how many employees need to be housed versus overall workforce. And that question seems to keep coming up again and again. So does that need to be articulated somehow in a report so it's up front? If it's 2,500 out of 10,000 employees or something, so as to set that stage. I think a lot of people don't know what that is. And we have a new council member. I don't know if he knows what those numbers look like. So that would be one question I would have. The other is, I do think it's important to address homeless head on, because it's such an emotional issue that keeps coming up. So whether it's taking a look at all of city-owned land and making a statement that there needs to be solutions looked at and put together, or needs to be considered as part of the 6 blocks, somehow take a look at that. So I wouldn't shy away from it. I go ahead on.
Thank you.
If I could just add to the shelter conversation, just from a mayor staff perspective as well. You're going to hear the mayor talk a lot about what he's doing around homelessness in his State of the City speech on Wednesday. We've talked around it a little bit, but the administration has added over 600 beds. He'll talk about his strategy on ending homelessness, increasing bed capacity, increasing outreach, increasing permanent supportive housing opportunities as well. So this is not the only place for that conversation. We're working very closely with many folks in this room and on this committee on strategies to address the issue. So just because this committee and this report may not touch on it, that conversation is happening in a large way.
Jessica, can that be referenced somehow though? Is there kind of a master plan, if you will? And I think that becomes a reference point, and then that gets the monkey off the back of what this is trying.
Right. Unless, again, to Jay's point, unless there's a desire for this committee to recommend that it be a requirement in the NOA, that's similar to the Civic Theater, that's something that you agree should be on this site. I think I can work with Chris, with Jay on helping incorporate language into that report. The city has an adopted community action plan on homelessness that you can reference.
I wouldn't put it in the NOA unless there wasn't some other way to solve it. Right, but if there's another way to solve it, and there's X number of item that can be addressed, then make it clear.
And there's many shelter beds opening up, frankly, on a weekly basis at this point. So it's not like this one shelter is the only shelter capacity within the system.
And I would say, as a Downtown San Diego partnership, and we've always been supportive of permanent supportive housing, affordable housing. We have the most affordable housing in all of the city of San Diego. In downtown San Diego, we're always supportive, but as we've talked about many times, we want it in the entire city of San Diego, not just in downtown San Diego. We want it throughout downtown San Diego, not just in one part of downtown San Diego. So, we are completely open to parts of this site having different, maybe a small portion at 20% AMI, and small portion at 80% AMI, and another portion at 100% AMI. But we would like to see a variation here, just like we'd like to see variation all over downtown and all over the entire city of San Diego. So we keep taking all of the services, we keep taking all of the permanent supportive, and we keep taking all of that in downtown, and we can continue to take more, but we want to see it over the entire city of San Diego.
Yeah, and I think we've had a lot of great discussion on the variety of housing that, we'd prefer to see. And again, not with current tax credits, that we're creating new housing. I think that was a great point that came out of all our discussions. So I see it as what the developers proposed back to us based on those, comments, I guess, within our subgroups on kind of variety of very low to, whether it's SROs or small units to multi-unit, different income types, but variety is important.
And those are the kinds of things we can incorporate into the NOA cover letter, even if it's not a requirement. It can be a strong desire, and then we can, in the evaluation process, take that into consideration.
And I know this is listed as an action item. I don't think we've changed anything so much that we need to re-vote again. And I also think we lost our quorum regardless. So everybody comfortable with that? I can get some nods.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, if there are no other comments, I'm going to conclude this item. And I think I think just the only other item on here is committee comment generally. So back to the committee, one last chance.
I just comment about the 23rd. Are we going to get a pretty good idea about how that meeting is going to go so that we can pretty much get the things that we need to get done? And is that going to be the last meeting?
Yeah, I was just going there before we adjourned. I started, for those of you who are in the mayor's office, with my chair report earlier, just talked about Jay, and Jay, you can talk further about it, but Jay's working on a draft final report for our recommendation or for our consideration on the 23rd. Jay, I believe you want to get this out in advance so we have time to review it. Not putting you on the spot, I've heard you say that a couple of times. I also failed to mention that the mayor is asked to meet with the committee chairs, and so we'll be doing that next week so that we can share directly with him all of the work and get his feedback for that last meeting. And hopefully, I don't want to get out in front of him, but hopefully he'll be able to come by for at least a few minutes. I see Jessica rolling up.
Yeah, we've got him confirmed now for the 23rd.
Wonderful, thank you.
And I'll just comment, yes, the plan would be to get a draft of the committee report out by sometime early next week. So give people at least as much time to review. I would hope we wouldn't try to wordsmith it by committee, because, changing a word here and there, but obviously I want to give the committee the opportunity to weigh in. If there's some important point that's not being made or should be made a little differently, that's what the role of this committee is for. Maybe we'll send it out in a Word format and let people track changes so that they can all be submitted and we can follow the tracking. And then hopefully have a final vote on the report on the 23rd with whatever changes get incorporated. If you need one more, I don't know if you would need another meeting if depending on what comes out of on the 23rd, or you can do it by, absentee, to be determined. But the idea would be, yes, give you at least 4 or 5 days, 6 days to go through the report. It's not going to be that lengthy that you couldn't go through it. And then come prepared to take a vote on the report on the 23rd.
Great.
If I could also just conclude, so the 23rd will be the last regularly scheduled meeting. After that, it'll be just these special meetings. We'll we'll give you all a heads up in accordance with our requirements, but meeting on an as needed basis moving forward after that. We don't finish our business until we vote to dissolve the committee, so we can meet moving forward without problem.
Great, thanks, Chris. All right, well, thank you everyone for all of your participation today, especially those of you who can make to City Council. Thank you for that effort. And we will adjourn and see you all on the 23rd.
Kind of fun to be in person.
What?